Hey guys, how's it going? This is the first Inception, first episode of Mabsoot Musings, and this podcast, just to give a basic synopsis of what it's kind of going to be about, or the idea, the vision that I have for this podcast, is that we're going to try to interview interesting people within their field, whatever that field may be. So it might not necessarily be a particular theme like a fitness theme or entertainment theme or anything like that, but it might be all of those depending on who we talk to. This podcast is strictly about interviewing and talking to interesting people. During the times that we don't have an interview set up, we will be going through some current events, maybe just talking to other people that might have a good insight on the things that are happening around us. And maybe my idea is that this will maybe inspire some people to get into some fields that maybe they weren't thinking about before. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you were thinking about, going into a field or thinking of doing something, and now you realize that maybe that's not the best move for you. So, and it's just, otherwise it'd just be very entertaining, very interesting to know about subjects and subject matters that maybe you didn't have any knowledge about before. So that's kind of the idea for the show. Again, this is just the first episode, so we don't have anything lined up yet. This is just kind of introducing myself. My name is Armin, and I will be your benevolent host for this podcast. I will try to put out this podcast maybe start off once a month. Maybe that's a little bit too zealous for a first time podcast, but I think once a month is good. As we get more into interviewing and more getting people to come on the show, obviously would like to increase the output of episodes, so hopefully our audience will be patient with us as we get to that point. And again, this is something that I'm doing to try to help others, so hopefully this will benefit everyone who is going to be listening to us. So just a couple of, like I said, didn't have any interviews set up today. This is just the initial podcast, but just a couple of things that I've been reading through this week. So there was an article, now this is more from a nutrition fitness standpoint, but there was an article that came out by the FDA done on eggs, and it said that some kind of ridiculous comment that eating more than 3 eggs is going to be harmful to an individual, that's going to cause their health to deteriorate in some way, form, or fashion. I think in most cases, when we're talking about eggs, they generally talk about the cholesterol involved in eating those eggs. Is it just me, or that I'm noticing a pattern with certain items? Eggs is one of them. Coffee is another one. It seems like every time a study is done, that study negates the study done prior. And to me, I eat a ton of eggs and never had an issue with my cholesterol. Now, I know this is just one person. It's not a study. This is just myself and my genetics. However, you kind of have to look at this. What is in an egg that will, cause your cholesterol to go up? I mean, we know that primarily the cause of high cholesterol is not fats. Now, we used to think that it was. Now it's pretty much determined that it's sugar, carbohydrates. High levels of them will cause your bad cholesterol to go up, good cholesterol to go down. So the egg is basically the standard of a whole protein. It has everything that you need there. That's kind of the measurement of what a whole protein is. So to say that eating more than 3 eggs a day is somehow going to harm your health is ridiculous. I mean, if you think about it, when you're talking about people that are eating more than 3 eggs a day, I mean, generally these are not like fitness people or people that are involved in fitness. These are generally studied on regular people. Well, if you think about regular people, what do regular people eat with eggs? Is it just 3 eggs? Is it just eggs and that's it? No, I mean, they often eat, pancakes. They often eat syrup with it. They often eat, bacon with it and other things that are highly concentrated in sugar and carbohydrates. So when we're doing this study and you're focusing on eggs, but then you're excluding all the other factors that are involved, it skews the study. So you're not looking at the high sugar content. You're not looking at the pancakes, which is ridiculous. You're not looking at all these other factors, and then you're looking at the eggs and then saying, oh well, that's all these people ate more than 3 eggs, so we're going to conclude that eggs is the issue. So to me, my personal opinion, I'm not a doctor by any means, but I don't see any issue with eating more than 3 eggs. I mean, obviously, we can probably wait till the next study comes out that's going to completely negate this one, but I would say that you're pretty safe on that. Of course, unless you're already in bad health. If you're already in bad health, it's it could be an issue, just like anything. I mean, if you think about it, sodium is not a problem. Sodium generally is not a problem for people that are in good normal health. But if you have heart issues, if you have blood pressure issues, then sodium is very much an issue, very much a problem. So that's just one of the things that you have to also consider when you're eating something. Is, do you have a predisposition to an illness? Are you already ill, and this is going to make it worse? So eggs, sodium, all these other things, when you're in good health, they're an attribute. They add to your health. They better you. But if you have already some kind of condition, some kind of issue, then that would definitely be something you want to reconsider or talk to your doctor about, because you're already in a kind of downward slope, so you don't want to add to that. So another article that I was reading earlier this week, I had a lot of time to read a lot of articles, a lot of downtime, and I knew that we weren't going to have a guest on today, so I decided that there might be something interesting to talk about. One of the things that was looked at and discovered that hot tea, and I know we have a lot of tea drinkers probably listening to the show. I know I'm one of them. And hot tea can cause cancer of the esophagus. And as looking into the study, it was really hard to determine what causes it. But if you think about it, you're talking about scarring the esophagus tissue with scalding tea. So I definitely see that happening. So that seems reasonable to me that would happen. I would avoid, I wouldn't say you don't want to drink any tea, but I would definitely avoid drinking just scorching tea. And it's like, I'm originally from Eastern Europe, and the tea drinking is common, very, very common, and you generally drink, fairly hot. So now I will say I can't remember, and again, this is just me. I mean, this is just one person. This is just one anecdotal evidence. Don't remember a lot of Eastern Europeans having cancer of the esophagus, but that who knows? I mean, that they might have. I just don't remember it, but that's the study. I mean, the study basically says that you're scarring and burning the esophagus tissue over years. That eventually becomes a serious problem, and could cause cancer of the esophagus. So I thought those were kind of interesting issues. So we had a lot of topics about fitness today. This particular article that I saw, and a lot of people have already put out videos on it, but so, we all know that in the fitness industry, there's a lot of supplements. I mean, everyone is making a supplement company. It seems like the thing to do, and which is amazing to me that people are still going into it, because as many supplement companies as there are, I would think that it would be a business that most people wouldn't want to go into, just because I would imagine it would be very hard to make a living, considering that every fitness athlete and every sports athlete of any kind has a supplement company. I mean, even LeBron James, you would think, why would he need to make a supplement company, has one. So yeah, it's a very interesting subject, because a lot of people have made videos on this company called Blackstone Labs, who they no longer exist, but in the time that they were existing, I guess the government has been investigating them, and now they've been indicted, particularly two people, Aaron Zingerman and PJ Braun, that were involved in the company and owned the company. So what the indictment essentially, so basically the company was this kind of, had like a underground edge to it. They were 100% on the up and up as far as like buying the products, and I mean, it wasn't a matter of you're going somewhere in the back alley. I mean, this is something you can just order off their legitimate website. But however, they kind of dealt in subject matter with regard to supplements that were not illegal, but not necessarily legal. They were kind of like in the gray area. Used to be a lot of pro hormones were in that area. Now the government has put out a list that kind of bans a lot of these pro hormones. So there's this constant battle between the government adding pro hormones to the list, and then these companies adjusting the chemical name, the chemical compound, to avoid that supplement being on the list. So it's just this constant back and forth. So the government bans one product, then the companies change the product that it no longer falls under the ban, then the government goes back and bans that product. So it's just this constant issue. And Aaron and PJ were involved with this company that was kind of like that. They were selling products that weren't illegal, but they were still kind of in that gray area, and now apparently the government has decided, federal government has decided to go ahead and indict them, so they're going to be facing a decent amount of charges. So hopefully like things will work out for them. But yeah, it's rough, because when you have, so the federal government has all the resources that they could ever want, and for you as an individual, even if you have money, and as far as Aaron and PJ are concerned, I mean, they appear to have, a decent income, so they do have money. They can get lawyers. The thing is these lawyers are extremely expensive. Oh, they're so expensive, and I mean, and when they know you're under pressure, so any lawyer that Aaron and PJ is going to get is going to know that they're under pressure, and they're going to squeeze them for every penny that they can get, because this is such a public case. They know that they're facing legitimate prison time for this. So every lawyer knows that they will do anything to get out of that indictment. So they're going to squeeze them for everything that they have, and the federal government has no problem with resources. So it's a hard battle to fight. If you're going to be considering a plea deal, obviously very few plea deals in these kind of situations have 0 jail time, which is kind of what you want. You don't want to be in jail or in prison for any time. and that's kind of like the problem with that is it's a a battle uphill. And every minute, every day that you spend battling, you're just dishing out money. So even if you win the case, you beat the indictment, you take care of the issue with the government, you might be completely broke by the time that's done. Now, I know it's, better be free and broke than in prison and have money on the books outside. But, still, it's kind of like a lose-lose situation. So just kind of goes to show you that it's, the supplement business, especially when you're dealing with gray market type of situations, it's a crapshoot. You might be okay for a while until you make enough sales where the government now decides that you've made too much or you've attracted their interest, and at that point an investigation gets started, and it might be years. So if you think about Blackstone Labs, I believe it's been several years since they've been around, so they've shut down since, I would say like maybe 5 years, maybe more, I don't know, somewhere around there. And they are now just being indicted. So you got to understand that the government has been having an open investigation on them for years. So when they're coming with this indictment, they're not coming with empty hands. I mean, they're coming with, boxes and boxes of paperwork and documentation of well, I guess now that's kind of old style, digital paperwork and evidence of everything that was being done. So they're gonna, just launch all this evidence against them, and it's gonna be very hard to battle it off because, you as Aaron and PJ weren't expecting this, so you weren't preparing. The government was preparing for years, and now you have basically a short amount of time to try to make up all that time in preparation. Very hard to do. Very, very tough to do. So it's one of those things. Is everybody has to make their own decision. But personally, I would think reconsidering your business choices, if you're into that would be your best option. But of course, who knows? Maybe if you ask Aaron and PJ, they might not suggest that. So anyways, so apparently, interesting story. So there was a friend of our family that was going on a trip, and all of a sudden, we get a call. We had to make help him prepare with some other things, and we get a call, and he's like, "Well, I'm not going to be able to go on, this morning. Can you drop me off in the evening?" And the reason was because all the Boeing 737 Maxes were grounded, and I haven't heard about it at that time. And what is going on? So apparently, all these Boeing 737s that are having these issues, they're all having mechanical issues, and all these airplanes are having to make emergency landings, and all this other insane stuff that's happening. It's a scary time to fly if you're flying on that particular jet, and then it kind of makes you wonder like, oh, well, what about all the other planes? And it's funny, I never really had a problem with airplanes, but there's always something in the back of your head. It's like, this is a piece of metal. This is a piece of metal. This is metal and plastic with rubber wheels flying through the air at ridiculous speeds, and is gigantic, carrying 300, 400 people. If you think about it in terms like that, that's insane. And the room for mistakes are so small. If you think about it, I had a buddy that I used to work with, and he had another job, and his job was making aircraft parts for airplanes, commercial airplanes, and it's it's high responsibility, very high responsibility, as you might imagine. And when they got done with each part, they would actually have to sign off on it. So if there was a part, that went wrong, something went wrong, you have a track record of who was making the part. So everything, had to be done appropriately. But if you think about it, I mean, this is, we're just talking about bolts and screws. Now, high level bolts for sure, high level metal, high level plastic. I mean, this isn't just standard stuff, as you might imagine being on an airplane, but still, just bolts and screws holding up a piece of metal and plastic, flying through the air at ridiculous speeds, and you're just sitting there in a chair. I mean, that is insane if you think about it. So when things like this happen and these airplanes have all these issues, you just start getting, a little concerned, like, you never know what could happen. So now they've been all grounded. I don't know, they might have released them by this time, but there was, it's one of those things where it's like you always take a risk. That they always used to say that, flying is safer. Whenever somebody would be scared to fly, I'm scared to get on an airplane. That's such a crazy thing to be on an airplane, flying through the air. A lot of people have anxiety with it. So used to people say, oh, well, you have more chance of dying, or actually being in a car crash than you do in an airplane accident. The thing that they don't tell you about is your survival rate in a car wreck is much higher. You fly down, hit the ground, you're flying above the clouds, all of a sudden you get the turbulence, and then the plane goes nose down and you go at crazy speeds into the ground. Your survival rate is 0. Yeah, compare that with a fender bender, or like even a bad wreck on the interstate. There's no comparison. So yeah, you might only get one plane crash per 1,000 car accidents, but when you're talking about deaths, that one plane crash is, the survival rate is 0 on that. All those people in there are dead. There's no survival rate of that. So it's scary, but still got to fly, right? Still got to get to places. Nobody is going to be driving 15 hours when they could get on an airplane and fly. I mean, we're about to go to Pensacola just for a few days at the beach with the wife and family, and I don't know what the Pensacola time was. I know that my wife is from Tampa, so we drive to Tampa from here in Nashville, and it's about 12 hours, 11 hours, something like that. So Pensacola probably even much longer. I mean, who's driving that? I don't know. Not me. I mean, I don't mind driving. It's interesting that whenever we go somewhere, I'm okay with driving. Up to 10 hours, I'm fine with driving. My wife immediately falls asleep. It's like rocking a baby. As soon as we get in the car, literally within the hour, she's asleep. So pretty much can't depend on her to keep me awake if I'm getting tired. Thankfully, I can stay awake, for a while. Just put on some podcasts, ironically, and listen to them as we go. Interesting thing, a couple of podcasts that I was listening to, that I like to listen to and like to recommend, besides obviously my own, Dan Carlin, incredible podcast, Hardcore History, wonderful. If you're a history buff, or even if you're not, he makes it so interesting. It's not even a matter of if you're interested in history. I mean, if you're not, and he's covering a period that you don't care about, you never cared about, guaranteed, after you're done listening, you're going to care about it. It's that good. I mean, and I'm trying to recommend one. They're all good. The one, on World War II between the Soviet Union and Germany was really good. Goes to the Ostfront is what it's called, I believe. The ridiculously good is the Fall of the Roman Empire. It's a longer series. Each part is like 3 hours, but it just covers basically from the Roman Republic all the way down to basically the collapse of the Roman Republic, and with characters like Julius Caesar and so forth. So it was very interesting, and I've listened to it multiple times. So it's that good. It's not even that you would just listen to it once. I mean, these are podcasts, like I said, 3 hours a piece long. There's 4 of them or 5 of them, and I've listened to it probably like 10 times already. So, I mean, Dan Carlin definitely is one to check out. Also, similar concept of what I'm planning to do, the principles at least of it, that interview type of style. Joe Rogan has a really good podcast, which I'm sure most people are aware of, and he has very interesting people on his podcast. I kind of skipped through it because some people I'm not that interested in, and others I am. He had some nutritionists on. He had a really interesting journalist on, then a medical historian recently. They're all very, very interesting. But what's funny is occasionally when I don't have anything to listen to, I'll try out a person that I would have thought wouldn't be that interesting, and it blows my mind. Like the journalist that was a narco journalist in Mexico, and the conversations and the stories that he told. Initially, I was not trying to listen to him. I didn't. I mean, journalists. It sounds good in theory, but I just didn't have the drive to try to listen to something like that. But I did anyway. And when I did, oh man, it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites. The guy talks about stories that occurred when he was in Mexico and other places. I mean, it is incredible, and it totally changes your view. Like, we kind of know that drugs and the cartels and everything are in that area and other Spanish-speaking areas, but it's one thing to kind of know it abstractly, kind of conceptually, but to actually hear him tell specific stories of events and how often these events happen and put numbers to it, it's pretty scary. Pretty scary to think that there's people that live in those kind of circumstances. So it also, helps you think about where you want to vacation next, and whether you should go, to any of these places that are close or around the situations that he's talking about. So, like for example, I was talking to my wife about going to Brazil, and we know lots of people that went to Brazil and had no problems, but there's some stories that he told about Brazil, and it makes you wonder if that's somewhere you want to go. I mean, I still would like to go either way, but it does make you think. So I thought all that was very interesting. So those are two podcasts that I thought would be pretty cool. And as far as like entertainment, I haven't been to movies in a long time. Recently, I went to see a movie, Captain Marvel, and most of the movies that I watch now are movies that I basically just watch on TV. I get it through iTunes, and iTunes has made things so much simpler, and just all these applications made things so much simpler, like Netflix and Hulu. I mean, the movie industry must be screaming. Although, I mean, with that being said, these Marvel movies are pulling in tons of money, so apparently, I mean, people are still willing to pay tickets to go to the movies when these Marvel movies are coming out. But as far as every other movie, I don't know how many people go see these other movies anymore. You would think that the numbers are down, especially with Marvel pulling in so much cash from their movies. I mean, and they're kind of across the board, so it's not just children going to see these movies. These are adults and older people. So it's one of those things where it crosses barriers. So I don't think anybody's really going to see. I might be wrong. Shoot me a comment. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure majority of these movies are not making the money that they used to, which is why you're seeing high-level actors start to try to get into roles with these Marvel superhero movies. Because in the past, it was kind of thought of, these superhero movies were kind of thought of like the clown movies. These are just like children's movies, or no respectable actor would definitely want to involve themselves with a movie like that. And now you're seeing real legit actors and actresses involved in these movies, and not just involved, but wanting to be involved. Now battling other high-level actors for roles in these movies, which gives you an idea who has the upper hand. I mean, I just recently read about Tom Cruise wanting to be in a movie. There was somebody else, I can't remember the name, but I mean, it's just multiple high-level, respectable actors, and now are just trying their best to be in a superhero movie, because that's all that people are kind of watching now. They kind of gave up on all these other movies. They're just not as interesting anymore. I don't know how much Captain Marvel, grossed, but it has to be a significant amount. Let me take a look. I mean, I would think they grossed a significant amount. I mean, my mother-in-law went to see Captain Marvel, and she never goes to see movies like this. And I mean, she loved it. So it was just a very, very interesting concept that an older woman, in her like 50s, 60s, would be interested in a movie like that. That would never happen in the past. So it looks like domestically, Captain Marvel total lifetime grossed $305,815. Foreign and plus foreign, I guess it's plus foreign. So it's foreign it grossed 607 million. So so it's doubled, almost doubled, 607,300,000. So domestically it was 34.4% of their total, and foreign they 64.5%. So worldwide, $940 million, 605,815. So yeah, I know dollars came out. That was my southern accent there coming in, even though I'm not southern at all. But that was how surprised I am about how much money these movies are making me change accents. Opening weekend was 153 million and some odd change. Wow, that's a lot of money. And this movie was a great movie. It was definitely worth seeing, but I don't think that's nearly as much as they even made with Avengers and other movies. So this is a great outcome for them, but this is, I mean, they're used to this. This is like every movie they put out makes a ton of money. So what that shows you is that everybody's going to see it, and that's amazing. That's amazing. So here's another article that I noticed here. So TV writer, and I saw it on Twitter, TV writer explains why extreme happy endings are bogus. So we're talking about movies again. I figured I'd keep the theme, and I saw this just recently, this morning actually, as I was coming to work. I noticed this article, and I didn't completely read through it, but just to talk about it. Extreme happy endings, agreed. Let's just say agreed on that. Nobody needs them. Nobody needs extreme happy endings. They're not realistic. Nowadays, we're we worry about realism, right? We want things to be realistic. That's why, going back to these comic book movies, we have, so they have powers and so forth, so that's unrealistic, right? But the way they help them, the way they progress in the movies for these people to have these powers are more realistic than they were in the past. So when you had like superhero movies occasionally, like many years ago, like let's say 20 years ago or whatever, it would be like some weird way they got their powers. It didn't make any kind of sense. Now they're so meticulous about making it look like, oh yeah, like this could actually happen, even if you know that it couldn't. I could definitely see how, like being, dropped in a bucket full of nuclear acid or whatever will give you powers. Like, it's molecularly changes your, genetic. It's like they go through so much effort to make it seem as realistic as it possibly can be and as scientifically based as it possibly can be. And I would truly believe it's because that we want things to be realistic. We want things to be more relatable to us. Like hard to movies that are just too out there. It's hard to get into, right? It's hard to try to watch those movies. And back to this point of extreme happy endings, it's not realistic. Like that never happens. It never happens in real life. You might have like a good outcome. Something might be better than before, but it's not going to be this everything is happy. You go from extreme horror to your life is now beautiful and sunshine. Like that never happens. In real life we have ups and downs. Things get a little better, they get a little worse. Sometimes they can get really bad. But eventually it passes. Whatever you're dealing with, it passes. So extreme happy endings are not a reflection of human life, and I think that's the problem. And I agree with whoever this TV writer is, and I don't even know who he is, but I definitely agree with him about that, because you can have, and his issue was, you can have a great movie and ruin it all with an extreme happy ending, and 100% agreed. You put all this, and here we go. The movie business is so interesting in that sense too, because you could put all your effort into a movie, everything you got, and you made it this great, wonderful, amazing movie, and then all of a sudden, you get to the ending, and you ruin it. In this case, this TV writer says you can ruin it with an extreme happy ending. Of course, you can ruin it many other ways, but yeah, it's a tough business to get into, and that's why companies like Marvel and I guess they're owned by Disney. That's why it's so amazing that they can reproduce that outcome every time. It's kind of like they've got the formula down, and now they're just cranking out. It's like that mad scientist, right? He keeps working on a formula. He's been doing it for years. People in the village hate him. They don't understand him. He's doing, crazy things. They're like that crazy man up there on the mountain. He's performing all these experiments. Nothing ever works. And all of a sudden it works, right? So one day it works. And one day the formula comes together, and then after that, you just crank it out. Same formula. Once you got it, you got it. And that's kind of how it works. That's how sports teams work too. It's like once you got the formula, the plays, once you know how to get there, you just try to reproduce it. You just do the same thing over and over again. So that was pretty interesting, I thought. Don't have much to say today. It is just the first episode, so I will be putting a lot of effort into getting some people in the studio, talking to them, just some interesting things, you guys will be, you'll really enjoy. And again, I'm glad to be able to do this. I'm glad to be able to talk to you guys and be able to give you something to think about. So again, this is Mabsoot Musings, and thank you again for joining in.